The chill in their opulent New York penthouse wasn't from the biting November winds whipping off the Hudson. It was from him, Damien Hawthorne, the man who had once vowed to cherish Amelia Vance, the man whose eyes once held galaxies of love for her. Now, with their first child, a precious son growing safely beneath her heart, Damien recoiled from her touch as if she were poison, his excuse whispered into his ear by another woman. It was bad luck. His mistress, a siren named Serafina, had spun a web of deceit so potent it was strangling their marriage, threatening their unborn child. And Amelia was about to discover that this bad luck was merely the poisonous tip of a far more sinister iceberg. The city lights of Manhattan glittered like a carpet of fallen stars below the floor-to-ceiling windows of Damien and Amelia Hawthorne's penthouse apartment. It was a view that usually filled Amelia with a sense of wonder, a testament to the life they had built. Damien, a self-made billionaire in the volatile world of tech startups, had given her everything she could have ever dreamed of. Except it seemed his touch. Amelia, 7 months pregnant, rested a hand on the gentle swell of her stomach, a small, tender smile playing on her lips as she felt the flutter of her baby boy. This child, their son, was meant to be the culmination of their love story, the golden binding of their already gilded life. Instead, a chasm had opened between them, cold and vast, a chasm that had begun to form around the time Serafina Dubois's name started appearing on Damien's phone with increasing alarming frequency. Damien had always been a tactile man. His affection was a language spoken through lingering touches, reassuring squeezes of her hand, and the comforting weight of his arm around her shoulders. Now those gestures were relics of a bygone era, replaced by a careful, almost clinical distance. If she reached for him, he would flinch almost imperceptibly, his eyes clouding over with an emotion she couldn't quite decipher, fear, guilt, or something else entirely. "Don't, Amelia," he'd murmured one evening, pulling away as she tried to snuggle closer on their custom-made Italian sofa. "It's not good right now. Not good." "Damien." "What do you mean?" She'd asked, her voice laced with a hurt that was becoming achingly familiar. He ran a hand through his dark, impeccably styled hair, a gesture of agitation she knew well. "Serafina says, she says it's bad luck. For the baby. For everything." Amelia had stared at him, speechless. Serafina. The spiritual consultant he'd met at some ridiculous wellness retreat. Marcus Thorne, his supposed friend and business associate, had dragged him to. Serafina, whose voice Amelia imagined was as smooth and venomous as her influence. "Bad luck?" Amelia finally choked out a hysterical laugh bubbling in her throat. "Damien, I'm your wife. This is our child. You're seriously telling me you won't touch me because some charlatan says it's bad luck?" His jaw tightened. "She's not a charlatan, Amelia. She understands things, energies, vibrations, things you dismiss." "I dismiss nonsense." Amelia's voice rose, a rare occurrence. "I dismiss the idea that the woman carrying your child is a source of bad luck for you. What kind of twisted logic is that?" Damien turned away, presenting her with his broad, unyielding back. She said, "Physical intimacy. With you. Right now. It could disrupt the positive energy field I need for the new funding round. It could even affect the baby's aura." Amelia felt a cold dread seep into her bones, a dread far more chilling than the November air. It wasn't just an affair, she realized with sickening clarity. This was something insidious, a manipulation so profound it was warping her husband's mind, turning him against her, against their unborn child, using the most bizarre and unassailable of weapons, superstition. Their penthouse, once a sanctuary of love and laughter, began to feel like a gilded cage. The luxurious furnishings, the priceless art, including a stunning Degas ballerina sculpture Damien had bought her from a Sotheby's auction last year, seemed to mock her. Damien slept in one of the guest rooms, now citing her discomfort and his need for undisturbed rest before crucial business meetings. He claimed it was for her benefit, so she could have the master suite to herself. But Amelia knew the truth. He couldn't bear to be near her, not because he didn't want to, but because Serafina had decreed it. Her prenatal appointments at the exclusive Mount Sinai West Birthing Center became solitary affairs. Dr. Ramirez, her obstetrician, noted Damien's absence with a polite professional neutrality that Amelia found almost unbearable. "Everything is progressing beautifully, Amelia," Dr. Ramirez would say, her smile warm, but her eyes perceptive. "Baby is strong and healthy. Is Mr. Hawthorne managing to find time with his busy schedule?" Amelia would force a smile. "He's swamped, you know how it is. But he's very excited." A lie. A pathetic, transparent lie. The days bled into weeks. Damien became more distant, more irritable. He was on the phone constantly, his voice low and urgent, often punctuated by Serafina's name. He'd return late, smelling faintly of an exotic, unfamiliar perfume, a scent that wasn't Amelia's Chanel No. 5, but something heavier, cloying like overripe fruit and incense. Amelia confided in her best friend, Chloe Chen, a sharp-witted journalist who had a nose for trouble and an even sharper tongue for fools. They met for lunch at a quiet cafe in the West Village, far from the prying eyes of their usual social circle. "He said what?" Chloe exclaimed, nearly choking on her artisanal iced tea. "Bad luck. Amelia, the man, owns half of Silicon Alley, and he's scared of cooties from his pregnant wife." Amelia picked at her salad, tears pricking her eyes. "It's her Chloe. This Serafina. She's got her claws in him so deep I don't even recognize him anymore. He's treating me like I'm contaminated." Chloe reached across the table, her expression softening with concern. "Honey, this is beyond weird. This is cult-level manipulation. Who is this woman? What does she really want? Money, I suppose." Amelia sighed. "Influence. Damien is incredibly wealthy and perhaps vulnerable right now. He's been under immense pressure with Hawthorne Global Holdings trying to secure a merger. He says Serafina grounds him, helps him see clearly. She's helping him see clearly by making him abandon his pregnant wife," Chloe scoffed. "Sounds like she's blinding him. You need to find out more about this Serafina Dubois. Where did she come from? What's her angle? Because bad luck is the lamest, most insulting excuse I've ever heard." Amelia nodded, a new resolve hardening her gaze. Chloe was right. She couldn't just sit by and watch her marriage, her life be dismantled by a woman hiding behind a veil of mystical nonsense. The Patek Philippe watch on Damien's wrist, a gift from her on their 3rd anniversary, now seemed to tick down the seconds to their marriage's demise. She had to fight, if not for Damien, then for her son. This was no longer just about a husband's betrayal. It was about protecting her child from a father who was clearly losing his mind, and from the woman who was orchestrating his descent. The name Serafina Dubois became an obsession for Amelia. Armed with Chloe's journalistic instincts and a growing sense of desperation, Amelia began to dig. Damien, in his Serafina-induced haze, had become careless, leaving his phone unlocked, his laptop accessible. It was a betrayal of his trust, perhaps, but Amelia felt he had betrayed her on a far more fundamental level. She found late-night calls logged to a number she didn't recognize, texts filled with cryptic advice and affirmations that made her skin crawl. The lunar cycle is unfavorable for confrontational energy. Damien, avoid conflict with E for the next 48 hours. Focus on purifying your intentions. Another read, the amethyst I gave you will absorb the negative vibrations emanating from her anxieties. Keep it close. He was paying Serafina, of course. Astronomical sums transferred to an account under SD Consulting. For what? For telling him his pregnant wife was a jinx. Chloe, true to her word, put her investigative skills to work. Serafina Dubois, Chloe reported a few days later over a secure line, is a ghost, or at least she wants to appear that way. No social media to speak of, which is weird for a spiritual consultant these days. The address linked to her consulting business is a mailbox service in a strip mall in Queens. But I did find something interesting. A whisper, really, through an old contact who covers the less savory side of high society. What is it? Amelia asked, her heart pounding. She used to go by a different name, Sarah Jenkins, and she wasn't always a purveyor of cosmic wisdom. She was an escort, a very high-end one, apparently with a reputation for being extremely good at getting into men's heads, not just their beds. She disappeared from that scene about 5 years ago, and then Serafina Dubois emerged. Same woman, different package. Sarah Jenkins. The name sounded so mundane, so ordinary, compared to the exotic allure of Serafina Dubois. An escort. It made a sick kind of sense. She knew how to manipulate men, how to find their weaknesses and exploit them. Damien, with his recent business pressures and perhaps a latent superstitious streak Amelia had never fully appreciated, had been ripe for the picking. There's more, Chloe continued, her voice grim. The circles Sarah Jenkins moved in. Sometimes they intersected with some pretty shady characters, the kind of people who don't just want your money. They want to own you. Amelia felt a shiver trace its way down her spine. This was deeper and darker than she had imagined. The bad luck excuse escalated. Damien started avoiding being in the same room as Amelia for extended periods. He claimed her agitation, her perfectly understandable distress at his behavior, was creating turbulent energies that could jeopardize his crucial merger deal with a Japanese conglomerate. He even suggested she go stay at their Hamptons house for some peace and quiet, an idea Amelia vehemently rejected. She wasn't going to be exiled from her own home. One evening, Amelia tried to reason with him again. She found him in his study, staring intently at a small, velvet-lined box. Inside, nestled on satin, was a strange, obsidian-like stone, undoubtedly a gift from Serafina. "Damien, please," she began, her voice soft pleading. "We need to talk. About us, about this situation, about what this woman is doing to you, to us." He looked up, his eyes distant, almost glazed. "There's nothing to talk about, Amelia. Serafina has foreseen great success for the merger, but it requires alignment, focus, certain sacrifices. And I'm the sacrifice," Amelia's voice trembled. "Our marriage, your son." "Don't be dramatic." He snapped, his gaze flicking back to the stone. "This is temporary. Once the deal is signed, once the energies are stable, Then what, Damien? You'll suddenly remember. You have a wife. You'll deign to touch me again when Serafina gives you permission. He stood up, agitated. You don't understand, because you refuse to. You're so grounded in your mundane reality, you can't see the bigger picture. The bigger picture. Amelia felt something snap within her. The carefully controlled composure she had maintained for weeks crumbled. The bigger picture is that you are choosing a con artist over your family. You are letting her fill your head with poison. She told you not to touch me. Your pregnant wife. Do you even hear how insane that sounds? Does she tell you where to meet her? I bet it's somewhere discreet, like the Chateau Marmont, isn't it? So no one sees the great Damien Hawthorne with his spiritual guru. The mention of the Chateau Marmont, a place they jokingly referred to for celebrity hideaways, seemed to strike a nerve. A flicker of something, guilt, surprise, crossed his face before his mask of detached superiority slammed back into place. My relationship with Serafina is none of your concern, he said coldly. She is helping me achieve things you can't even comprehend. Oh, I comprehend them, Damien. Amelia shot back, her voice dripping with scorn. I comprehend manipulation. I comprehend betrayal. What I don't comprehend is how the man I married, the man I loved, turned into this puppet. The argument escalated the raw, painful words, echoing through the vast, sterile apartment. It ended as it always did, with Damien retreating, shutting himself away, leaving Amelia alone with her anger, her fear, and the silent kicks of their child. A few days later, Amelia noticed something new, a subtle, almost undetectable scent of antiseptic clinging to Damien's clothes when he returned late. It wasn't the hospital smell of her prenatal clinic. It was different, sharper, and he seemed more tired, paler than usual, despite his claims of Serafina's energizing influence. Chloe's words echoed in her mind. The kind of people who don't just want your money. They want to own you. A terrifying thought began to take root. What if Serafina's control wasn't just psychological? What if the bad luck was a carefully constructed narrative to isolate Damien, to weaken him, not just emotionally but physically? The paranoia gnawed at Amelia. She started paying closer attention to the expensive bottled water Damien exclusively drank, now the pre-packaged organic meals Serafina had apparently recommended for his optimal energetic balance. She knew she was walking a dangerous line. If Damien suspected her snooping, he would shut her out completely. But the well-being of her unborn child and a lingering, perhaps foolish hope that she could still save the man she married from the abyss he was teetering on, spurred her forward. One afternoon, while Damien was out for a vital energy balancing session with Serafina, a session Amelia knew from the discreet GPS tracker Chloe had helped her install on his car, was taking place at a lavish suite in the Carlisle Hotel, not some mystical retreat. Amelia searched his study again. Tucked away in the back of his desk drawer beneath a pile of financial reports, she found a small, unmarked prescription bottle. The label was from a pharmacy. She didn't recognize the doctor's name, unfamiliar. The pills inside were small and white. Her blood ran cold. What were these, and why was he hiding them? The bad luck superstition was feeling less like a bizarre quirk, and more like a smoke screen for something far more sinister. Serafina wasn't just a spiritual con artist. She was playing a deadly game, and Damien, willingly or unwillingly, was her pawn. The discovery of the unmarked pills sent a fresh wave of terror through Amelia. She carefully photographed the bottle, the label and the pills themselves, sending the images to Chloe with trembling fingers. "Chloe, look at this. I found it on Damien's desk. He's been acting so strange, so tired, despite what Serafina claims about energy." Chloe responded almost immediately. "This looks serious, Amelia. That Dr. Alistair Finch isn't a GP. He's a psychiatrist, but one with a very niche practice, known for discretion and dealing with wealthy clients who have exhaustion or stress-related issues. Sometimes the treatments are aggressive and not always mainstream. The pharmacy is a specialty compounding pharmacy. This isn't just some melatonin." A psychiatrist, Damien had never mentioned seeing one, and Serafina's influence was supposedly all about holistic spiritual well-being, not pharmaceuticals. Unless the medication was part of the manipulation. "What do you mean, aggressive?" Amelia typed back, her stomach churning. "Let me do some more digging on Finch and common compounds from that pharmacy for his patients. But Amelia, you need to be careful. If Serafina is involved in medicating him covertly, or coercing him into taking something that makes him more suggestible or dependent, this is next-level dangerous." The pieces began to fall into a horrifying mosaic. Serafina isolates Damien, using superstition, feeds his anxieties about the business, and then, perhaps with the help of a complicit or duped psychiatrist, introduces medication to further cloud his judgment, making him more pliable, more dependent on her guidance. The bad luck of touching his pregnant wife wasn't just a cruel emotional tactic. It was a way to ensure Amelia, with her clear-sighted love and concern, couldn't get close enough to see what was truly happening to break the spell. Amelia felt a surge of protective fury. This wasn't just about saving her marriage anymore. It was about saving Damien from a predator who was systematically dismantling his life, his health, his very will. Her opportunity to investigate further came unexpectedly. Damien announced he had to fly to Tokyo for a week for the final negotiations of the merger. Serafina naturally had deemed the timing auspicious. He was agitated about leaving not out of concern for Amelia, but because Serafina couldn't accompany him. Apparently her auric field was needed in New York to maintain the positive energy flow for his return. "You'll be fine, won't you?" he asked, a flicker of his old self briefly surfacing as he saw her wince while trying to tie her shoelace. The baby was pressing uncomfortably on her ribs. "Of course, Damien," she said, forcing a brightness she didn't feel. "Just close that deal." The moment his black Rolls-Royce Cullinan, driven by his longtime chauffeur, pulled away from their building, Amelia sprang into action. She had a week to find concrete proof, a week to understand the full extent of Serafina's scheme. She started with Damien's private office within their penthouse, a sanctuary she rarely entered, with the information Chloe had provided about Dr. Finch. Amelia searched for any correspondence, any records. She found a folder tucked deep within his filing cabinet, labeled Personal Wellness. Inside were invoices from Dr. Alistair Finch for consultation and bioenergetic harmonization therapy, a pseudoscientific gloss for what was clearly psychiatric treatment, and chillingly detailed notes that seemed to be in Serafina's handwriting, outlining Damien's progress, his resistance points, and strategies for enhanced compliance. One note read, Subject DH, showing increased susceptibility to auric suggestion. Dosage of compound X appears effective in managing anxiety and improving focus on designated directives. Continue to reinforce negative associations with subject EV to prevent emotional interference. Proximity to EV. During final pregnancy trimester is highly inadvisable due to her disruptive maternal energy, frame as extreme bad luck for both business and fetal well-being. Compound X. So that was the name of the medication. And Serafina wasn't just advising. She was directing his psychiatric treatment, coordinating with Dr. Finch, or perhaps even bypassing him, using him as a legitimate front. Amelia felt physically ill. They were drugging her husband, systematically, and framing her as the danger. She immediately called Chloe. "I found it. Notes from Serafina. They're calling the drug Compound X. She's essentially programming him, and she's deliberately making him fear me, fear being near me, especially now." "My God, Amelia," Chloe whispered. This is criminal. We need to get a sample of those pills analyzed. And you need to find out who Dr. Finch really is, who he answers to. Is he in on it with Serafina, or is he another one of her dupes?" Amelia remembered something else. Marcus Thorne, the friend who had introduced Damien to Serafina. Marcus who stood to gain if Damien's company faltered, or if the merger went sideways in a way that benefited Thorne's own smaller tech firm. "Could he be involved, Chloe?" Amelia said slowly, a new terrifying theory forming. "Do you remember who introduced Damien to Serafina?" It was Marcus Thorne, his business partner, the one who's always been a little too friendly, a little too eager to offer advice. "Marcus Thorne," Chloe mused. "He's always struck me as a snake in a Savile Row suit. If Serafina is working with Thorne to sabotage Damien, then this goes far beyond a simple con. This is corporate espionage, psychological warfare." The scope of it was staggering. Serafina wasn't just a manipulative mistress. She was a weapon. And Damien wasn't just a fool in love. He was a target. Driven by a cold, hard fury, Amelia decided her next move. She would go to Serafina's supposed address in Queens, the mailbox service. It was a long shot, but maybe, just maybe, she could find a lead. A loose thread, anything to connect Serafina more concretely to this unfolding horror. She also knew she had to try and get a sample of Compound X for analysis. She took one of the pills from Damien's hidden bottle, replacing it with a carefully shaped piece of aspirin she shaved down to size. It was a risk, but she needed to know what they were giving him. That evening, as a storm raged over New York, mirroring the turmoil in her heart, Amelia Vance, 7 months pregnant, and fighting for her husband and her child, drove her own modest SUV towards the unglamorous streets of Queens. She was no longer just a victim. She was a woman on a mission, a mother determined to protect her family from the insidious evil that had infiltrated their lives, an evil that cloaked itself in whispers of bad luck, while methodically poisoning everything she held dear. The gilded cage had been broken open, not by Damien, but by Amelia's own desperate courage. And she was ready to face whatever monsters lurked in the shadows. The address in Queens led Amelia to a run-down strip mall. SD Consulting was nothing more than a tarnished brass slot, P.O. Box 342, amidst a row of identical mailboxes in a brightly lit but desolate mail service store. Disappointment washed over her. Of course, Serafina wouldn't make it easy. As Amelia was about to leave, a frazzled-looking clerk, idly watching a tiny television behind the counter, called out, "Can I help you, miss?" Amelia hesitated, then decided to take a chance. "I'm looking for Serafina Dubois, SD Consulting." The clerk, a young man with tired eyes, shrugged. "Just a box here, like all the others. She comes in once a week, maybe. Always pays cash. Wears big sunglasses even when it's cloudy." He paused. "Actually saw her just yesterday. Picked up a package." A package? Amelia's senses tingled. "Do you remember anything about it? Who it was from?" He scratched his head. "Nah, not really. Just a standard courier envelope. But she was arguing on the phone when she left. Sounded stressed. Something about a delivery being compromised and Thorne needing to handle his end." Thorne. Marcus Thorne. Amelia's blood ran cold. It was more than a suspicion now. A direct link. Serafina wasn't just an independent operator. She was taking orders, or at least coordinating with Marcus Thorne. "Thank you," Amelia said, her mind racing. "You've been very helpful." She rushed back to her car, the name Thorne echoing in her mind. The plan was becoming clearer, more sinister. Thorne, using Serafina as his instrument, was orchestrating Damien's downfall. The merger, the business, his mental state, all under attack. And the bad luck superstition was the perfect cover, a way to isolate Damien from the one person who might see through the deception, his wife. Back in the city, Chloe had news. "I got a preliminary read on Compound X, or at least what my pharmacology contact thinks it might be, based on the description and Finch's known prescribing habits. It's likely a custom-compounded benzodiazepine, possibly mixed with a mild antipsychotic and a beta blocker. Designed to reduce anxiety, yes, but in higher or unmonitored doses, it can cause confusion, lethargy, emotional blunting, and increased suggestibility. Basically, it could turn Damien into a zombie, highly susceptible to whatever Serafina is feeding him. So they're definitely drugging him to make him easier to control." Amelia breathed, the horror solidifying. "And that psychiatrist, Dr. Finch," Chloe continued. "Turns out he had his license suspended a few years back in California for unethical prescription practices. He resurfaced in New York with a wellness angle. He's vulnerable, probably easily bought or blackmailed by someone like Thorne through Serafina." The web was intricate, disgusting. Amelia felt a desperate need to talk to Damien, to shake him, to show him the poison he was consuming, both literally and figuratively. But he was thousands of miles away, in Tokyo, cocooned in Serafina's lies. Amelia knew she couldn't wait for Damien's return. She had to act now. She needed more than just notes and pill analyses. She needed something irrefutable, something that would expose Serafina and Thorne, something that Damien, even in his fogged state, couldn't deny. The next day, Amelia made a bold decision. Serafina was expecting a delivery to be handled by Thorne. This suggested a physical exchange, a vulnerability. Amelia remembered the expensive perfume Damien sometimes carried the scent of. Heavy, exotic, cloying. She'd smelled it faintly in his study, too near the drawer where he kept the pills. Perhaps Serafina had her own lair, a place beyond the anonymous P.O. box, and the transient luxury of hotel suites like the Carlisle, where Damien met her. Chloe, using her network, managed to get a possible residential address for Serafina. A discreet, high-security apartment building in a newly developed ultra-modern part of Long Island City overlooking the East River. It was listed under an LLC untraceable to Serafina Dubois or Sarah Jenkins directly, but the description of the tenant who'd signed the lease, striking raven-haired, always in designer clothes and sunglasses, matched Serafina perfectly. "This is risky, Amelia," Chloe warned. "You can't just go breaking in." "I know," Amelia said. "But I have to see. Maybe I can catch her meeting Thorne, or find something, anything, that links them definitively to what they're doing to Damien." Armed with a high-quality camera and a surge of adrenaline-fueled courage, Amelia staked out the Long Island City apartment building. For hours she sat in her car, watching, waiting. The modern architecture was all sleek lines and dark glass, impersonal and impenetrable, much like Serafina herself. Just as dusk began to settle, casting long shadows across the waterfront, a familiar figure emerged from the building's glossy lobby. Marcus Thorne. He was dressed impeccably as always, but his face was tight with anxiety, and he kept glancing around as if expecting to be watched. He got into his own car, a dark Audi A8, and sped off. Amelia's heart leapt. Thorne at Serafina's building. This was it. Minutes later, Serafina herself exited. She was unmistakable. Tall, statuesque, draped in a flowing silk caftan, her face obscured by enormous black sunglasses. She carried a small, expensive-looking leather briefcase. Instead of getting into a car, she walked towards the waterfront promenade, her demeanor agitated. She kept checking her phone, then looking around. Amelia, her instinct screaming, got out of her car and followed at a safe distance, using other pedestrians and the landscaping for cover. Serafina stopped at a secluded bench overlooking the twinkling Manhattan skyline. She sat placing the briefcase beside her and made a call. Amelia was too far away to hear, but Serafina's body language was tense, angry. After a few minutes, she hung up, stood abruptly, and walked away, leaving the briefcase on the bench. A dead drop. Amelia's mind reeled. This was like something out of a spy movie. Who was Serafina leaving the briefcase for? Not Thorne, he'd already left. Her stomach clenched with a sudden awful realization. The delivery being compromised, the clerk had mentioned. Serafina arguing on the phone. Thorne needing to handle his end. Perhaps Thorne was supposed to pick this up, but something had gone wrong. Amelia waited hidden for what felt like an eternity. No one approached the bench. The briefcase sat there, a silent, ominous secret. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and the distant wail of a siren. She couldn't just leave it. Whatever was in that briefcase could be the key. Taking a deep breath, her heart hammering against her ribs, Amelia walked casually towards the bench, as if she were just another resident enjoying an evening stroll. She glanced around. The promenade was mostly deserted now. With a surge of desperate bravery, she picked up the briefcase and walked briskly back towards her car, expecting at any moment to hear a shout, to feel a hand on her shoulder. Nothing. Back in the safety of her locked car, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip the steering wheel. Amelia looked at the briefcase. It was unlocked. Inside, nestled among files and what looked like financial statements related to Hawthorne Global Holdings, was a small velvet pouch. And inside the pouch were more of the little white pills. Compound X. Dozens of them. Enough for weeks, months even. There were also several vials of a clear liquid and a small box of syringes. But there was something else. Something that made her blood freeze. A small, elegantly printed card, Dr. Alistair Finch, for patient Damien Hawthorne. Instructions for S. Dubois. Administer as per schedule. Next refill due. And beneath that, another set of documents. These weren't about Damien. They were medical records. Serafina's medical records. Detailed charts, lab results, and sonogram images. Serafina Dubois was pregnant, approximately 4 months along. Amelia stared at the sonogram, a grainy black and white image of a tiny developing fetus. A wave of nausea far more intense than any morning sickness she had experienced washed over her. This changed everything. Serafina wasn't just manipulating Damien for money or for Thorne. She was pregnant. Potentially with Damien's child, though Amelia couldn't be sure. And if she was, the bad luck superstition about Amelia touching Damien, about Amelia's disruptive maternal energy, took on an even more sinister, more personal dimension. Serafina wasn't just trying to isolate Damien from his wife. She was trying to eliminate the competition to position herself and her child as Damien's primary focus, his only legitimate family. The cruelty of it, the sheer audacity was breathtaking. Serafina was using one pregnancy to destroy another, one maternal bond to sever another. Suddenly, Damien's words from months ago echoed in her mind. She said, "Physical intimacy. With you. Right now. It could disrupt the positive energy field I need. It could even affect the baby's aura." He had meant Amelia's baby. But what if Serafina had twisted it, implying that Amelia's presence was bad luck for her baby? 2. Amelia's phone buzzed. It was Damien calling from Tokyo. His voice sounded slurred, distant. "Amelia. Is everything okay, Serafina? She said she felt a disturbance in your energy. Are you all right? Is the baby?" Amelia clutched the briefcase, the evidence of Serafina's monstrous deception, heavy in her lap. The fog in Damien's voice, the parroted concern from his manipulator, solidified her resolve into something diamond-hard. "Everything is fine here, Damien," she said, her voice surprisingly calm, cold even. "But we have a lot to talk about when you get back. A whole lot. About luck, about energy, and about the viper you've welcomed into our lives. And Damien," she added, unable to resist, "I hope your Patek Philippe is keeping good time, because yours and Serafina's is about to run out." She hung up, leaving a stunned silence on the other end of the line. The game had changed. Amelia had the evidence, and she had the fury of a mother protecting her child. Serafina Dubois had underestimated her. And soon, very soon, the world Damien Hawthorne thought he knew was about to come crashing down. Damien returned from Tokyo 2 days later, not to the serene, Serafina-approved environment he expected, but to an apartment that felt charged, like the air before a violent thunderstorm. Amelia was waiting for him not with recriminations or tears, but with a chilling composure that unnerved him more than any outburst could have. Chloe was there too, a silent, supportive presence, along with a distinguished-looking older woman, Amelia introduced as Ava Sharma, a renowned litigator specializing in complex fraud and personal injury cases. On the vast marble coffee table, where once art books and society magazines had rested, Amelia had laid out her evidence, the photographs of Serafina's notes, the analysis of Compound X, the contents of the briefcase, the pills, the vials, the syringes. Dr. Finch's incriminating card, and most damningly, Serafina's sonogram pictures and medical records. Damien, still slightly jet-lagged and visibly disoriented by the unexpected tableau, stared at the display, his face paling. "Amelia, what is all this? What's going on? Who are these people?" He looked from Amelia to Chloe, then to Ava Sharma, a flicker of fear in his eyes. "This Damien," Amelia began, her voice steady, devoid of its usual warmth, "is the truth. The truth you've been too blind or too drugged to see." She walked him through it, piece by painstaking piece. Serafina's real identity as Sarah Jenkins, her connection to Marcus Thorne, the strip mall P.O. box, and the clerk's testimony about Thorne, the stakeout at Serafina's apartment, the contents of the abandoned briefcase, the analysis of Compound X and its effects on his cognitive function, and emotional state. With every revelation, Damien sank further into the plush sofa, his expensive suit suddenly looking rumpled, his confident demeanor crumbling. He kept shaking his head, muttering no. Serafina wouldn't. She was helping me. The energies. The merger, Damien, Ava Sharma interjected, her voice calm but authoritative, was likely the primary target. Marcus Thorne has been trying to undermine you for years. Serafina Dubois was his weapon. She preyed on your stress, your insecurities, and yes, perhaps a touch of latent superstition, and amplified it all with a carefully curated regimen of psychological manipulation and medication prescribed by a compromised doctor. Damien looked at the pills on the table, then at his own hands, as if seeing them for the first time. Compound X. I thought it was just for stress, for focus. It was to make you compliant, Damien. Amelia said, her voice softening almost imperceptibly at his evident confusion. To make you believe her every word. To make you believe I was bad luck. That our child was somehow at risk because of me. She paused, then picked up Serafina's sonogram. And this, Damien. This is Serafina's ace in the hole, I imagine. Or perhaps her ultimate leverage over you. Damien stared at the image, his eyes widening in disbelief. She's pregnant. 4 months, apparently, Amelia said. Is it yours, Damien? He looked utterly lost. A few times. Before she said it was bad for my energy to be intimate with anyone until the merger was complete and the spirits were aligned. She said even her proximity had to be carefully managed, that her own aura was so potent it could interfere if not handled correctly for my business. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of profound distress. She never told me she was pregnant. Of course she didn't, Chloe scoffed. She was waiting for the right moment to drop that bomb, probably after she'd completely alienated you from Amelia and convinced you that Amelia's baby was some sort of negative omen. The carefully constructed world. Damien had been living in a world governed by Serafina's pronouncements, and mystical energies shattered around him. The realization of how thoroughly he had been duped, how cruelly he had treated Amelia, washed over him with the force of a physical blow. He looked at his wife, truly looked at her for the first time in months, at her tired eyes, her brave face, the protective hand resting on their unborn child. The child he had neglected, feared, all because of a calculated deception. Amelia, he began, his voice choked with emotion. I am so sorry. I was a fool. A blind, arrogant fool. Tears welled in his eyes. What she did to me. What I let her do. What I did to you. Just then the intercom buzzed. The doorman announced, Ms. Serafina Dubois is here to see Mr. Hawthorne. She says it's urgent. Amelia exchanged a look with Ava Sharma. Let her come up, Amelia said, her voice firm. It's time she faced the music. Serafina swept into the penthouse moments later, an image of concerned elegance. Damien, darling, she began, her voice like velvet. I felt such a terrible disturbance in your energy from Tokyo. I came as soon as I could. You shouldn't be around negative influences right now. Her eyes flicked dismissively towards Amelia, then widened slightly as she took in Ava Sharma and the damning evidence on the coffee table. Her composure, for the first time Amelia had ever witnessed, faltered. Serafina, Damien said, his voice raw with a pain and anger that was finally blessedly his own. Or should I say, Sarah Jenkins. Serafina's eyes narrowed. She quickly regained her poise. I don't know what you're talking about, Damien. Amelia has clearly been poisoning your mind with her jealousy." "No, Serafina." Amelia stepped forward. "The only poison here is what you've been feeding my husband, literally." She gestured to the pills. "Compound kina and the lies, the superstition, the bad luck." Ava Sharma then took over her legal mind, cutting through Serafina's facade. "Ms. Dubois, or Jenkins, we have substantial evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud, illegal administration of controlled substances, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, among other potential charges. We know about your arrangement with Marcus Thorne. We know about Dr. Finch. We have records of payments communications." Serafina's face was a mask of fury. "You have nothing. Damien needs me. His success is tied to my guidance." She looked at Damien, her eyes blazing. "Don't listen to them, Damien. They're trying to destroy everything we've built. The merger." "What have we built?" Damien stood up, his frame shaking, but his voice gaining strength. "You built a cage of lies around me. You drugged me. You tried to turn me against my own wife, my own child." He pointed to her sonogram on the table. "And you failed to mention this little detail, didn't you?" Serafina glanced at the sonogram, then back at Damien, a calculating look entering her eyes. This was her trump card. "That baby Damien," she said, her voice suddenly softer, laced with a new kind of manipulation, "is yours. Our child. A child conceived in power and destiny. Don't you see Amelia, her child? They are the interference. They are the bad luck. I was protecting you. Protecting us. Protecting us," Amelia cried out, her control finally snapping. "By telling him not to touch his pregnant wife, by trying to drive a wedge between a father and his unborn son. You are a monster, Serafina, a monster who is carrying your heir." "Damien," Serafina hissed back. "Think carefully about who you cast aside." But Damien was no longer under her spell. The fog had lifted, replaced by a clarity born of betrayal and shame. He saw Serafina for what she was, a calculating, ruthless manipulator. His gaze shifted to Amelia, her face etched with pain, but also with an undeniable strength that shamed him to his core. He saw the love he had almost thrown away, the family he had nearly allowed to be destroyed. "Get out, Serafina," Damien said, his voice low and filled with cold fury. "Get out of my home, out of my life. Ava will be in touch with your lawyer, if you even have one that isn't as crooked as Finch." Serafina stared at him, her mask finally cracking, revealing the desperation beneath. "You'll regret this, Damien. You need me. Thorne will destroy you without my insights. I'll take my chances," Damien said. "With my wife, with my real family." Serafina, seeing her power evaporate, her carefully constructed world, collapsing, uttered a string of curses and threats before storming out of the apartment, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. The storm had broken. Damien collapsed back onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands, sobs racking his body. Amelia, despite everything, went to him. She didn't touch him, not yet, but she stood beside him, a beacon of strength he didn't deserve, but desperately needed. The fight was far from over. There would be legal battles, the fallout with Thorne, the question of Serafina's child. But in that moment, as Damien wept for his foolishness, and Amelia watched him, a tiny, fragile seed of hope began to germinate amidst the wreckage. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could find their way back. But the path would be long, and trust once so catastrophically broken would be the hardest thing to rebuild. The bad luck had been Serafina's creation, but the good luck, if it ever came again, would have to be earned. The days and weeks that followed were a maelstrom. Eva Sharma, true to her reputation, moved swiftly. She filed civil suits against Serafina Dubois, Sarah Jenkins, and Dr. Alistair Finch. The evidence Amelia had gathered was compelling. Simultaneously, information regarding Marcus Thorne's corporate espionage and his collusion with Serafina was discreetly passed to the board of Hawthorne Global Holdings and to regulatory authorities. Damien, under medical supervision, began the slow and arduous process of detoxing from Compound X. The withdrawal was brutal, filled with anxiety tremors and overwhelming guilt. He was forced to confront the full extent of his actions, the cruelty of his neglect towards Amelia, the willing surrender of his autonomy to a charlatan. He finally understood that Serafina's spiritual guidance was a meticulously crafted psychological prison. The merger with the Japanese conglomerate, which had been the focal point of so much of Damien's Serafina-induced anxiety, was put on hold. News of the internal turmoil at Hawthorne Global, coupled with Thorne's now exposed machinations, sent ripples through the financial world. Marcus Thorne was swiftly ousted from his position and faced his own legal battles and public disgrace. His attempts to use Serafina to destabilize Damien had backfired spectacularly. Dr. Alistair Finch's already precarious career imploded. Faced with irrefutable evidence of unethical practices and malpractice, his license was permanently revoked, and he faced multiple lawsuits, including one from Damien. Serafina Dubois vanished, or rather Sarah Jenkins did. Facing imminent legal action and public exposure, she liquidated whatever assets she could and disappeared, leaving behind her plush Long Island City apartment and the unpaid bills. The question of her pregnancy and Damien's potential paternity hung in the air, a lingering shadow. Eva Sharma hired private investigators, but Serafina, a seasoned chameleon, proved elusive. For now. For Amelia and Damien, the penthouse, once a symbol of their success and later a gilded cage, became a space of difficult conversations and tentative reconnections. The immediate threat was gone, but the scars remained. Amelia, though vindicated, was heartbroken. The trust that had been the bedrock of their marriage was shattered. "How could you believe her, Damien?" she asked him one evening. Her voice quiet but heavy, with the weight of months of pain. They sat in the living room, the city lights muted by drawn curtains. "How could you believe I, your wife, the mother of your child, was bad luck?" Damien looked at her. His eyes filled with a shame so profound it was painful to witness. "I don't have an excuse, Amelia. Only reasons, and none of them are good enough. I was stressed, arrogant. I wanted a magic solution to the pressure I was under. She offered one. She preyed on my ego, my fears, and the drugs. They made it so easy to believe, so hard to question." He reached out, then hesitated, remembering his months of recoiling from her. "The thought that I wouldn't touch you, that I hurt you so deeply when you needed me most. It will haunt me for the rest of my life." Amelia didn't shy away from his gaze. "It haunted me too, Damien, every single day." The birth of their son, Leo Hawthorne, a few weeks later, was a bittersweet occasion. He was healthy, beautiful, a perfect blend of them both. Damien was present, his touch no longer hesitant, but filled with a desperate, tender remorse. He held his son, tears streaming down his face, and whispered apologies to both Leo and Amelia. The road to rebuilding was slow. Damien threw himself into therapy. Real therapy this time, and worked tirelessly to repair the damage to his company and his reputation, this time with a newfound humility. He ceded significant control of his business decisions to a trusted board recognizing his own vulnerabilities. He never stopped trying to earn back Amelia's trust. There were no grand gestures, no expensive gifts. Instead, there were small things: his unwavering presence, his willingness to listen, his patience, his genuine efforts to be the husband and father he should have been. He shared his fears, his therapy progress, his nightmares about Serafina's control. He made himself completely transparent. Amelia, for her part, focused on Leo and on her own healing. She too sought therapy to process the trauma of the betrayal. She watched Damien cautiously. The love she had for him was still there, buried deep beneath layers of hurt and disappointment. Slowly, painstakingly, it began to resurface, nurtured by his consistent efforts and genuine remorse. Months turned into a year. Marcus Thorne was convicted of fraud and insider trading. Dr. Finch declared bankruptcy. Of Serafina, there was still no definitive word. Though rumors occasionally surfaced of a woman matching her description in various exotic locales, always one step ahead of the investigators. The question of her child and its paternity remained an unresolved spectre, one Damien had to learn to live with, prepared to face if she ever reappeared. One sunny afternoon, as they watched Leo take his first wobbly steps in Central Park, Amelia reached for Damien's hand. He looked at her, surprised, his heart leaping. She offered a small, genuine smile. "He's going to be a runner," she said softly. Damien squeezed her hand, a wave of gratitude washing over him. "Like his mother," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. Strong, resilient, and always moving forward. The bad luck had been a cruel illusion, a destructive lie. What they were building now, painstakingly day by day, was something real. Something tested by fire and forged in the crucible of betrayal and forgiveness. It wasn't the fairy tale life they had started with, but it was a truer one, grounded not in gilded cages or whispered superstitions, but in the hard-won wisdom of their shared ordeal and the enduring power of a love that had, against all odds, refused to be entirely extinguished. The penthouse lights still glittered, but now they illuminated a family, fighting its way back to the light together. The Patek Philippe watch, which Amelia had once thought was ticking down the seconds to their demise, Damien now wore as a reminder of time lost and of the precious time he had been given to make things right. Amelia's harrowing journey through the glittering facade of wealth into the terrifying depths of manipulation and superstitious deceit shows us the incredible strength of a mother's will and a woman's fight for truth. Damien ensnared by the cunning. Serafina made choices that nearly destroyed everything he held dear, proving that even the most powerful can be brought low by whispers and lies. From the heights of New York society to the dark corners of psychological warfare, this story peeled back the layers of a millionaire's nightmare. What did you think of Serafina's unbelievable bad luck tactic and her sinister motives? Could Damien ever truly be forgiven for his choices? Share your honest thoughts and opinions in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take on this dramatic tale. If Amelia's resilience and the shocking twists and turns of this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please show your support by giving this video a big thumbs up. Don't forget to share it with fellow drama lovers, and most importantly, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you won't miss out on our next unforgettable story. We delve deep into the human heart, and you won't want to miss what's coming next.